It's the Water Environmental Protection and Frank Mento.
Yes,
Are you?
good morning, Chairwoman Judy
Good morning.
and members of EP. Thank you. So we have one matter before you today, and that's the matter of a consent order. And this is, I would put this in the category of one of those good consent orders because this sets us on the pathway of removing ourselves from the ACJ. So let me start out with a very, very brief history of where we've been and where we are, and then I'll talk about some of the major tenets of the consent order so everybody's clear. So as most of you know, we originally entered into this consent judgment, this federal consent judgment, back in January of 1998. And really, that was as a result of a lawsuit that was brought by Atlantic States Legal Foundation and DEC. And that lawsuit was alleging violations of the Clean Water Act as it relates to Onondaga Lake. So the ACJ has been in existence now for 20 plus years. And we, meaning WEP, has done a significant amount of green and gray infrastructure projects intended really to reduce the impacts of combined sewer overflows to the lake. We, meaning WEP again, have achieved all the milestones, the construction milestones, as well as the stormwater capture milestones that were promulgated in the federal lawsuit. The new state order on consent that you have in front of you will now address some recurring issues in the tributaries that go into the lake. So for all intents and purposes, the lake is clean and meets the standards. The tributaries is where we still have some challenges. And so the resolution before you authorizes the execution of this consent order, but with the following conditions. And let me describe to you some of the major issues in the consent order itself. First, it is a planned 5-year order. And the intent of the order is to bridge the gap between where we are now, that is the ACJ, that's where we are now, versus where we want to get to, which is just being regulated at the end of our treatment plants by a typical permit. So as you know, all of our treatment plants are regulated with what's called a speedies permit, and we have to meet certain requirements. That's where we want to get to. At the Metro plant, we're under the ACJ, we want to get to a permit condition. This consent order allows us that pathway. The consent order will also allow for the county, DEC, and ASLF, who are all in agreement at this point, to petition the federal court to close the ACJ. And the consent order will become effective upon that ACJ closure. So what's in the consent order? It contemplates, amongst other things, these major components. Number one, a limited project investment. We still have to continue to do some projects. We are calling those partnership projects, however. So things like I-81, when I-81 is being progressed, we will take advantage of that and make several sanitary and storm improvements that will help us tremendously in reducing combined sewer overflows to the lake. We have our Green Improvement Fund, that will continue. We have a settlement agreement with ASLF. They will be doing projects. That will help us. As I said, DEC and ASLF are now on the same page as partners with us. We also will be doing what's called a use attainability analysis, strictly on the 3 tributaries. That analysis, in very simple terms, takes a look at the highest and best use of those tributaries and then suggests a reduction or a revision to the water quality standards. And finally, like any other combined sewer overflow community, we will have a very limited long-term control plan. So this consent order provides the county with a defined end game, 5 years, defined end game, and it limits the amount of investment and the uncertainty about a potential termination. The consent order also will have less overall costs. If we stay in the ACJ into perpetuity, the costs continue to escalate with no incremental value. Instead, if we go through this consent order route, we are protected from other citizen groups that may file a lawsuit because it's a consent order. It's defined as 5 years. It's very defined in terms of its scope and intent technically. And at the end of that, when we have an approved long-term control plan, we then are completely out of the ACJ and are regulated by just the permit requirements at the end of the treatment plan. So this is a good thing. In summary, it's been the product of negotiation for probably the past 6 to 8 months with DEC. I think we now have gained a partnership with DEC that seems to be one that we can work together and work forward on. I think that ASLF is now a contributing member to help us with this as well by the settlement agreement and by the projects that they need to do. And I think everybody's on the same page to bring this federal oversight to an end. So in a nutshell, that's the purpose of this resolution today. So I'll ask, I got Ben here, if you want to add anything to that, Ben?
No, I think it was great.
All right,
I have a question.
go ahead, Peggy.
Okay, so this is for 5 years. So can we put something in it that makes sure that it doesn't just, the work that we're doing, the oversight and everything isn't going to just end in 5 years? Can something be added to it that makes sure that like forever there's going to be oversight on this? I mean, it's good that we're able to get out of what has been at times a really expensive oversight. But we've done so much work, and hopefully
Yes.
with focusing on all the green things we've done, this would never happen again. But can we put something in it making sure that this is like re-upped all these good things that we're overseeing after the 5 years?
So Peggy, great question. There is already a mechanism in place to do exactly what you're saying. And that is the requirements at each one of our treatment plants for the Speedies permit. The Speedies
Okay.
permit is very extensive. At the end of the pipe, which discharges to any water body, we have to meet all kinds of criteria. So that is the oversight that will continue. We are not throwing away anything here. We are just getting out of the federal oversight and allowing us to do our job with DEC and make sure we are compliant under our Speedies permits, which apply to all our plants. So
And the tributaries?
yeah, the tributaries feed in. So
Right.
right. So the tributaries will be analyzed extensively through this consent order such that there is monitoring in place required to make sure we meet the conditions.
So how are we doing with Lake Creek?
Lake Creek is one of those tributaries.
Yep.
Certainly it has some bacteria issues. I got to tell you, some of those are county related bacteria issues because of CSOs. Some of those are upstream conditions beyond
Right.
county control. So the tributaries will be the focus of this consent order.
And they will continue to have oversight.
They will be monitored during the process of this consent order such that we have records and data available. And it will be an approval process with DEC and EPA to deal with the standard going forward after we do this analysis.
After the 5 years.
Correct.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Frank? Frank, how many tributaries are there that go into the lake?
3.
So for this case, it's Harbor Brook, it is Lay Creek, and it is Onondaga Creek. Those are the 3 main ones that feed into this necessary analysis, which everybody agrees needs to be done because, as I said, some of this is county responsibility, the CSOs. We get that. That's the purpose of our project work going forward. But a big part of this is also non-county responsibilities upstream in areas in the suburbs where private farms and mud boils and other things contribute to what impacts those tributaries. And so, we're going to do our part through this, the part that we're responsible for. And DEC has agreed to that. DEC understands that.
Okay,
And those 3 tributaries are, they have the CSO outfalls. That's why they're included. Those are the 3 CSO tributaries. So they're covered under the Metro permit.
okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Frank? Okay, is there a motion to move this?
So moved.
I'll
Kevin?
second it.
Peggy, all in favor?
I.
Aye.
You've got to take a
Aye.
call, don't you?
Oh,
Yeah, I'll do a roll call.
Okay, go ahead.
Legislature Jordan, Tassone,
Yes,
Abbott Keenan,
Yes.
Chase,
yes.
Holmquist.
Yes.
4 ayes, 1 absent.
okay, thank you. All right, is there any other new business?
This is Legislator Kuhn. If I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm confused because you talked earlier in the meeting about you're now the chair instead of Casey, but he's being marked as absent. So he's still on the legislature or not?
Legislator Kuhn, this is Darcy. I was going to correct the record with Melanie afterwards. No, he's not a member of the legislature anymore, so he's not actually absent.
Thank
Okay,
you.
my apologies.
It's okay, Mel.
4, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no other new business, this meeting will be adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.